All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this year's Pollution Prevention Virtual Workshop. So if you're not familiar with our pollution prevention program and our workshops that we do each year, last year we did a in-person workshop at one of our Tennessee Green Star partner facilities. And this year we decided that we wanted to do a hybrid approach. So we are doing this virtual workshop today so that anyone that's not able to attend our in-person workshop, which it will have different speakers, but we wanted to give that option for everybody. So once again, thanks for joining the virtual workshop that we will be having today. And then at the end of the presentations and this workshop, I'll give you some more information on our in-person workshop that's going to be held in Kingsport, Tennessee. So if you stay on to the end, I'll make sure you get that registration link, and there'll be some more information about that and some of our other upcoming events. So this workshop is being put on by the Tennessee Pollution Prevention Program in collaboration with Peak Performance Incorporated and UT Center for Industrial Services. So my name is Caleb Powell, and I'm an environmental scientist for the Office of Sustainable Practices at TDEC, and I will be hosting the webinar today for our wonderful speakers. Just a couple housekeeping items. Everyone is muted upon entry to reduce the amount of background noise, but if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to ask those in the chat, and I will work on asking those to our speakers and getting those answered. And we sure do hope that all of these webinars and workshops that we do, they run better if we do have questions. That's like the point. So feel free to send comments or questions that you have whenever you see something that you want some more information on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send a chat to everybody. Over on your right hand side of your screen, you should see a message from me that says, "This is a chat box, send all of your questions and comments here." So, and then what you'll want to make sure, there's a drop down box, and make sure that whenever you are sending it, that it either says host or presenter. Just make sure that's the word host or panelist is in that drop down box, so that I will be receiving those questions and I can get those answered for you. So just to give an overview of what's going to be covered today. This workshop is going to be highlighting several Tennessee-based technical assistance providers and the resources, as well as an overview of the latest from TDEC's Bureau of Environment. You will hear from TDEC's Deputy Commissioner of the Bureau of Environment, who will share updates from TDEC on recent legislation, statewide strategic priorities, as well as highlight the new brownfield remediation grant program. So the University of Tennessee Center for Industrial Services will provide an overview of the manufacturing extension program, services that they provide, and then how they can potentially work with your facility. Additionally, Peak Performance Inc. will share information on their work with manufacturers here in the state, the Smart Manufacturing Resources, and the Smart Factory Institute. So without further ado, I am going to pass it on over to a good friend of mine, Deputy Commissioner of the Bureau of Environment, Greg Young. Great guy to work with, even better guy to know. So, Greg, I'm going to pass it over to you to let us know about what's going on in TDEC.
Great. Thank you so much, Caleb. Really appreciate you guys hosting this and giving me an opportunity to say hey to folks and hopefully catch up on a little bit of the legislative update and some of the priorities that we are looking to advance across the state right now. We have come a long way at TDEC to really being focused on doing more than just regulation. And I bring that up because I know a lot of our manufacturers in the state go beyond just pollution prevention, and you are going beyond just mere compliance. Well, when I say we are looking to go beyond just mere regulation, we also want to as much as possible, be a resource through events like this and through our efforts with our stakeholders to really go beyond just the basic regulatory functions and truly help our stakeholders in what we're doing. So again, thank you for the opportunity, Caleb, to appear before your seminar here. I guess the first thing that y'all wanted me to talk about was legislation, and we had a good year last year on the legislative front. It's usually a mix of trying to pursue things that the governor's office says they want us to pay attention to and push through the General Assembly. And then there's oftentimes issues that arise from legislators that we are asked to provide input on. Some of those we defer to the General Assembly, don't really have much to say. Some of them we support, and all that being done really in close consultation with the governor's office. And one of the big ones that went through in 2023 and actually received unanimous bipartisan approval through both houses of the General Assembly was our work related to the brownfield statute. And a little bit of the backstory on how that happened. The governor, as y'all have I'm sure heard, has challenged the administrative agencies to rally around the notion of conservation, and there's a conservation initiative, if you will, or a conservation strategy that the governor references, and there's a handful of administrative agencies that really do have a strong role to play when it comes to environmental conservation. Especially the agency that has both words environment and conservation in its name. And so when the governor challenged us to think in this regard, one thing that we see happening in Tennessee, and we are very blessed for this, is a lot of development. We like to see the economic development. We like to see the residential development and people moving to Tennessee. But what we also wanted to focus on was recognizing that with those benefits come challenges, and being able to focus that development in areas where it makes sense, and being able to at the same time conserve and preserve areas that are uniquely Tennessee that should stay in a more natural or agricultural kind of state. And so what we started looking at is brownfields. And a brownfield is basically an area that has some real or perceived contaminant pollution. And so the question we started thinking through is, why couldn't we, as part of the governor's conservation initiative, develop some added benefits to our current brownfield program so we can focus the development and redevelopment efforts on already developed property? Let's focus there instead of having to go to a greenfield. And boy, that's, brownfields is kind of the original recycling and reuse, it's on a large scale. And the potential benefits of not only reusing that property, but also being able to get it back on the tax rolls, removing the blight, addressing, any environmental issues to remove those risks to human health and the environment. We just saw a huge potential. And so we suggested, we came up with a proposal to the governor's office that would create a state-run grant program. In addition to, there were two other tax-related components of the brownfield legislation where folks could obtain businesses could obtain financial benefit by utilizing brownfields, tax benefits from utilizing brownfields. And again, the goal being to stimulate that redevelopment as opposed to new development. And it has been just received, we did not have any opposition to this, any real opposition, and just great partnerships, and the vote, like I said, was unanimous. And so we do really appreciate the efforts of the governor's office and the General Assembly in supporting us on that legislation. A couple of other points that I want to make about the brownfield legislation is, one thing we were thinking through is we wanted to focus our assistance to the local governments because we thought they were in the best place to know the needs of their community as well as the opportunities within the community to clean up some blighted property kind of thing. And so the way we structured the grant program was that we would partner with local communities to fund their investigation efforts. Now, the other part of the brownfield program was already in place in that there's an opportunity for participants in that program to get liability relief in exchange for the agreed upon corrective actions, remedial actions. And so we saw this opportunity to work with local governments to identify the properties. From there, either local governments can themselves move through our brownfield program, or in a lot of cases, what we were anticipating, what we have seen in the past, is that private entities will at that point say, okay, here's a viable option for us to move to this town or do something here, where that private entity then becomes a partner in working a project through or a site through our brownfield program. And so to further incentivize that private participation, in addition to the grant program for local governments who work on sites, that's where the tax incentives come into place, is being able to really stimulate both sides of that equation, if you will. We also wanted to make sure we were focused on identifying opportunities in smaller rural or disadvantaged communities. You all may remember Executive Order 1, which required all Tennessee agencies to think about how their operations can benefit rural Tennessee. In fact, we had set a goal as a state of, at the time, there were 15 distressed counties in our state. In the last few years, because of Executive Order 1 and other activities, that number has been reduced to either 7 or 8. And so that is impressive that attention was paid and is paying off. And we are optimistic and hopeful that this brownfield program can be another way that helps remove sites, our counties, from that distress list by cleaning up these sites and encouraging responsible economic development. I'm looking at my talking points here. One thing that I don't know if y'all keep up with some of the social media or whatever that coming out of the governor's office. We have just over the last few weeks been working with the governor's team and the governor to do a little bit of a victory lap related to both brownfields and some of the other conservation initiative work. And so what we've been doing is going around the state. We had a nice meeting in Bolivar with Mayor McTizick and several other folks down there to really celebrate the signing of the brownfield statute and the opportunities that it creates for communities like Bolivar. And they are actually, what's really cool about that one is, and we hope to see this going forward on many sites, is Bolivar had been applying for years to secure an EPA brownfield grant, and they finally did, which is awesome. But that was another reason when we saw somewhat limited amount of federal EPA brownfield grant money available, and as states are prone to do, sometimes we think we can do things perhaps a little bit better than the federal government. So that is why we decided to move forward with our own grant program that can hopefully accomplish the same goals in a more efficient and effective way that doesn't have to get spread around necessarily between 50 states. So that was a good celebration in Bolivar. We're very happy to work with folks. We would ask you all as manufacturers and where you have opportunities for expansion and new location, please see if you all can take advantage of our brownfield program. We want to see it used and used heavily. Our goal is to run out of the appropriation as quickly as possible. I think we have a $5 million recurring, and that's not a lot, but we would like to fund as many projects as we can in order to really facilitate that reinvestment back into the communities and hopefully public-private partnerships. All right, so I think that is a lot about the brownfield, and I will stop at the end of my presentation to open up for questions on anything, but I also want to give myself an opportunity to stop talking for a minute and to see if anybody has any questions or comments, and let me get a little sip of water. So I will go on mute here for about 5 just to see if anybody has anything they want to ask.
Yeah, make sure that if you have a question for Deputy Commissioner Greg Young, that you put it in the chat box. I've got one that has came in, so I'll ask that in just a second, but just make sure you're using that chat box. And like I said, there's a drop down that you got to make sure that the host in one of those choices is make sure that the word host is in one of those so that I'll be able to see that question. So the question that came in is, as a manufacturer, what's our first step to being able to benefit from this brownfield grant?
So the question, your first step, let me make sure I'll give you a couple answers. There's the process of actually identifying property that would be eligible. Okay, so eligibility is probably the first thing that manufacturers would look at. Normally, what you're doing is trying to either expand or create a new facility or something like that where the property that you're looking to use has some real or perceived environmental contamination. So identifying that property and the eligibility is important. I think you could also look at partnership opportunities right out of the gate. In other words, most of you are likely already engaged with your local governments. And so if you wanted to leverage the brownfield dollars to get your local government partners to actually conduct some of the environmental investigation for a property as part of your desire to expand or relocate or whatever, then the brownfield grant can actually be given to that local government that you can partner with to do some of the environmental investigation that's inevitably going to happen on these projects. From there, you run it through the brownfield program, whereby if you did not cause or contribute to the contamination, then you can negotiate what's called a brownfield voluntary agreement, which again, that scenario, you are getting liability relief in exchange for conducting certain agreed actions that you're not having to go through kind of the entire Superfund cleanup process. What you're doing is hopefully making risk-based decisions that, okay, well, we don't need to clean up groundwater to the nth degree because we're not using it, so we can impose a deed restriction on that groundwater. You know, those kinds of, that's how a lot of the cleanup is done for brownfields. From there, I know I said I would just give you some initial steps. So from there, hopefully what manufacturers can look at doing is then recouping some of your investment on the environmental cleanup work, things like that, by being able to get tax breaks and tax incentives for your franchise and excise tax credit. So I think that's kind of the little bit of a smattering of here's if I was a manufacturer and you wanted to take advantage of this, here's some things you can look at doing. Any follow-up questions on brownfields?
Well, I actually went ahead and put a link in the chat that brings you to our brownfield grants and resources page. So on that page, you'll be able to look at some of the other resources for that, and then also there's a newsletter that you can sign up for that will give all the updates on the grant opportunities. So make sure to sign up for that, or just check that out. Maybe copy and paste that link into a document or something like that, so that you've got that. And I'm happy to also include that into our follow-up email for the end of after we get done with the webinar workshop. I have one more question that just came in. It says, are there significant tax abatements for incurring additional development costs when you have to rehabilitate a brownfield property? I know that was pretty long, but
no. I mean, yes, those tax incentives that you're talking about can be key to the amount of the investment. Okay, absolutely. But you know, you want to be able to take advantage of those tax incentives by going ahead before the fact and bringing the site through the voluntary program. What I'm not clear about, and I bet this is going to be problematic, is that if you've already acquired a site and never took it through the program, and then you've spent money on cleanup and that kind of thing, now trying to go back and get tax credit when you haven't, when the site has not been already enrolled in the brownfield program, I don't think that's going to pan out. So I think the key to that is try to get your sites enrolled and eligible and enrolled into the brownfield program to take advantage, in order to be able to take advantage of the tax credits.
Yeah, thanks. So this isn't about brownfield grants. But this is another one that just came in. That have you seen any legislation, or are you working on any legislation that has to do with the boom of EVs in Tennessee?
Boy, the legislation around EVs has really there's a couple of things to think through there. That's a great question. The first one is, what legislation have we already done? And what we have been focused on is recruiting the manufacturing. And so the legislation that has been done so far was to create basically a state entity called a mega site authority for the large property in West Tennessee that became Blue Oval City. So there are, and that's kind of a model that could be reused as additional sites perhaps are opened up for additional EV manufacturing. Usually that's a combination of saying, okay, here's the, and then you also have all the legislation to authorize incentives through economic development, et cetera, that are given. The other thing that is being talked about is how to manage perhaps new waste streams or new emissions relating to EV. What I remember I got the question, a similar question about, well, what are y'all doing around EVs specifically? And my answer to that senator, I think that may have been Senator Bowling, I can't remember, but was that, well, right now, as far as like specific environmental requirements on EVs, you know, we're not out there trying to create a EV target regulatory framework. Instead, we have an existing regulatory framework that already addresses a lot of what EV manufacturer has to is doing, and, you know, whether it's hazardous waste, whether it's air emissions, whether it's water discharge, all those components of the EV manufacturer already encompassed as part of our existing framework. Where we are internally looking is to figure out where we have gaps in that existing framework that we need to, and I probably wouldn't say it's going to be a statute or legislation. I would anticipate looking more at our rules and figuring out, okay, we've got new materials that we're dealing with. How do we need to ensure their proper recycling, disposal, whatever the case may be in that regard.
Thanks for that. Let's see. I'm not seeing any other questions currently. If you do have a question for Deputy Commissioner Young, please send that. I just wanted to
thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank y'all for giving me a little break from just the talking points. I enjoy kind of this give and take, and I figured I'd have fun doing it since this is kind of a workshop. And by the way, somebody's doing some construction work around me, so if you hear these loud sounds, it's not coming from me. It's somebody somewhere else doing something. All right. So I have managed to spend about 30 minutes rambling on about brownfields and a couple other things. But I want to hone back. There's two more things, Caleb, if I've got time, that I think would benefit your audience is brief mention of some of the other cleanup efforts and some of, you know, kind of the governor's thinking behind prioritizing those, and then talking briefly about the nuclear initiative. Is that okay, Caleb, or did you want me to hit on something different?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. Well, before I segue into the nuclear, let's talk a little bit about some of the governor's vision around and priorities around just cleanup generally. So obviously that legislation that was a big lick last year was the brownfield legislation. But government acts most powerfully in really two ways, I have found, or at least my bosses in government act in two ways that are very powerful. One is they say do a law. The second way, it's money. And we got money. They gave us money this year because in addition to talking about utilizing the brownfield program, we decided to try to quantify the world of what we call state Superfund sites, and we specifically focused on those sites that were part of what's called the GASB 49 list, which GASB 49 is an accounting standard of state liability, if you will. And we were able to, the conversation really started in one of these preliminary budget meetings where we said, you know what, let's try to give, about, I don't know, a few million from Finance and Administration, the governor's office, to go clean up some of these state Superfund sites. And so I remember we made some initial requests of like $5 million. I thought that was a lot. I'm like, I can do a lot with $5 million. Well, lo and behold, we're in there presenting with the governor, and the governor's like, well, Greg, tell me how much you need. Actually, he may have said commissioner. I don't think he knows mine, but he said, tell me how much you need to go clean up all of these state Superfund sites. And I remember when we said that, I was like, oh, Lord. So year one, we put pencil to paper and tried to come up with a number that could get a certain, we couldn't really even get our hands around all the state Superfund sites, but we figured out, okay, we can do this many for that much. So year one, we got around $32 million. And then we were able to come back year two and get about $40 million. So all in all, it's about $70 million or so. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little, I can't remember exactly now, but about $70 million to go clean up state Superfund sites. Because remember, the federal Superfund sites are, EPA's total, 90% of the note on that, and so they're paying that. We just have to put in our 10% contribution. But when it came to those state sites that we couldn't identify a liable party, that was out there and that we knew these were liabilities on the state, why don't we invest in those cleanups? And then to the extent that we can fold that into what we're also doing on brownfields, the opportunity to, again, reuse those properties, get them cleaned up so they can be reused in a more productive and beneficial way. So we're really proud of that effort, really thankful for the General Assembly and the Governor's Office supporting our cleanup efforts there. I'll use cleanup to transition into nuclear now. And I'm going to do that by talking about, you all have, as manufacturers, have probably heard a lot in the business community about the governor's efforts around a new nuclear ecosystem, if you will, and promoting through his executive order and through a financial investment, economic development activities around the nuclear industry. That's what's going on. But a big part of that, before you can get to the nuclear redevelopment, if you will, is in Tennessee, we have had a major role in the Manhattan Project. And as all states that were involved in that effort, environmental laws did not exist. And so those states now, including Tennessee, have been dealing with various forms of contamination from that prior nuclear work. So when we at TDEC looked at the nuclear stuff, we decide, or in my mind at least, I see two sides to the coin. One side is the nuclear ecosystem redevelopment, kind of your more traditional economic development stuff. But the other side of the coin is cleaning up the past legacy stuff, legacy contamination. And that's primarily focused around some of the East Tennessee Oak Ridge area. Which makes perfect sense is let's clean up some of these former DOE, Department of Energy sites, so that we can then bring in the new nuclear economic development. And we are seeing that. So the governor invested $25 million with TDEC to help stimulate and put skin in the game on those federal cleanup opportunities. That's a big number. It helps us as a state drive more quicker cleanup activities, primarily at Oak Ridge. We also have an opportunity that if we don't necessarily become subject to the whims of the federal government because of that funding that we were able to obtain from the state. For instance, our federal government may be shutting down here in a few days. Well, if that happens, and this won't happen, okay? The shutdown will probably happen, but the funding for DOE cleanup's not going to dry up, so I don't mean to cause any alarm here. But if it did and something happened, then we have a backstop where we can put in state dollars to continue those cleanup activities. To promote the nuclear redevelopment. And I will talk briefly now about some of the activities going on with new nuclear, and then I will shut up again and take some questions. So on nuclear initiative by the governor, basically you got two things. One is the executive order establishing the Nuclear Energy Advisory Committee. Commissioner David Salyers is the chairman of that committee. That committee is administratively attached to TDEC. The charge of that committee is to essentially understand where there are impediments or hurdles for fostering a new nuclear ecosystem economy and identifying workarounds or ways to overcome those hurdles. The executive order speaks in terms of kind of 2 or 3 buckets, if you will, of things that the governor's office wants us to consider. The first is what hurdles exist from a regulatory approval standpoint. Then what hurdles exist from a workforce and education standpoint. And then I think the third big one is what funding hurdles exist. And so right now the Nuclear Energy Advisory Committee has set up some sub-work groups, and based on those buckets I just outlined, and things are really going well. It's often when you get people volunteering to spend their time to develop ideas, and I mean, these are heavy hitters at all levels of industry and government that are participating in this committee. And TDEC is all in on it. We have some licensing regulatory authority through our Division of Radiological Health over nuclear material, but when it comes to instance for siting for a nuclear plant and things like that, there's a lot of federal government interplay there. So we feel really good about having the opportunity to try to say, okay, as the state regulator, where can we find opportunities to work with the federal regulatory entities to hopefully promote this new economic development? You know, in some ways, in my mind, I look at the nuclear opportunities in, you have Blue Oval City in West Tennessee. You got Middle Tennessee that's just always been going gangbusters for a while, and East Tennessee that's come along. And if we can kind of stoke those fires with some nuclear Renaissance type redevelopment. That's just going to be awesome for the state. Great example of what's being done already is at a site that was, oh God, I think it's called ETTP. That has basically, in a budget that was a lot of credit to the contractor for DOE, I think they came in ahead of schedule and under budget there with the demolition of the buildings and the soil remediation. There's some issues to discuss out there of groundwater, but basically that site that was where K25, all that type of operation is now basically a clean pad, and you're seeing new redevelopment, new nuclear development, like nuclear fuel for small modular reactors. You're seeing TVA just down the road at the Clinch River site. They've actually got a small modular reactor that they're building. And so I'm just thinking out loud here, there's probably three or four what traditionally would be kind of tier 1 entities already locating in that space. And so, probably that next wave will probably be looking at opportunities for co-locate or tier 2 kind of facilities in that space. And hopefully the Nuclear Advisory Committee will be able to say, okay, well, let's see, here's what's going on, here's where we need to try to facilitate that nuclear growth. The last thing I'll mention is that the governor also did put out obligate $50 million for it's not directly tied to the executive order, but I think it's something that if ECD, Economic Community Development Agency, does see opportunities, then they are charged with directing funding to incentivize that nuclear redevelopment. All right, I have almost talked for 45 minutes, and I feel like I need a cough drop. So let's get some questions on the table, and I'll be glad to answer them. If not, I will probably end up signing off, Caleb, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I didn't have a question. We had a comment come in. It just says ETTP equals East Tennessee Technology Park. So that was just a comment. I don't think it was really supposed to be a question, but yeah, let's see. I'm not seeing any more right now. Actually, here's one. In addition to state initiatives, could you talk about some of the volunteer ideas such as TVERS, TVERS?
Sure. TVERS is in response to the Biden administration's climate action plan, and so this is a lot of federal funding has stimulated certain environmental activities of our agency, and this is an example. Other examples include the ARP funding, where we have created, I think we have $1.3 billion of money that we have been putting out there to improve water and wastewater infrastructure. And similarly, the climate action plan, the way we are utilizing those federal dollars is developing a voluntary emission reduction. Right now, we're kind of in more think tank work group phase to solicit input and ideas on how to carry forward those emissions reductions on a voluntary basis.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'll make sure that I provide the QR code that we have for input from the public for what you spoke about the TVERS in that follow-up email that I send up for this workshop. I'll make sure that that is included because I think for that we're just trying to get as much input as we can. So just be looking for that in that follow-up. Let's see. That is all the questions that I have so far. If anyone has any more questions regarding what Commissioner Young has spoke about today, please feel free to send those in the chat. Even though if he finishes and signs off, I'll work on working with him to get those questions answered and then send off into our follow-up. So just wanted to say thanks so much, Greg, for taking time and sort of giving us an update on what TDEC's got going on and just all the great work that we get to do here in the state for our environment.
Yeah, Caleb, I hope I didn't drone on too long to the disadvantage of your other panelists. And if I did, other panelists, I apologize. I just looked at the time. It looks like I talked for 45 minutes. So my sincere apologies for being long-winded.
It's all right. Yeah, there was a lot of good updates there, and I think that we have plenty of time for both of our other presenters. So thanks again, Greg, and we appreciate all that you do. Next, I'm going to pivot over to our next speaker. I'm going to give the presenter capabilities to her. Our next presenter is Denise Rice. She is the president and CEO of Peak Performance, Inc. She's going to be sharing with us some information on their work with manufacturers here in the state, the Smart Manufacturing Resources, and the Smart Factory Institute. So without further ado, I will pass it on over to you.
Okay, thank you, Caleb. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then is my presentation up?
Yeah, you'll just have to go to the next slide.
There we go. Got it. So thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the beginning presentation. It was very informative. So I wanted to just present about the Smart Factory Institute. We're located at the Partnerships in Industry and Education in the PI Center. As Caleb said, my name is Denise. It's actually Denise Hall. I just got married in April, but I had been Denise Rice for 30 years, so I still answer to Denise Rice. I am a former plant manager and I've worked 34 years in the manufacturing industry. 26 of them was with Corning Incorporated, and I operated plants in Corning, New York, State College, Pennsylvania, and then also Durham, North Carolina, and then here in Tennessee in Cleveland. It was one of their joint ventures called Cormatech. And so a few years ago, we got involved in the Smart Factory Institute. It was a initiative that was started by Volkswagen, and they have a Smart Factory Institute located in Hanover, Germany. And when they looked at their supply chain and looked at the small and medium-sized manufacturers that were presenting or that were providing and supplying materials to them, they became a little bit concerned because Volkswagen has lots of resources and they're able to have their Industry 4.0 automation engineers and be able to support that, but they weren't sure that their first, second, and third tier suppliers would be able to keep up with it. And so we went over to Germany and we benchmarked the Smart Factory Institute over there. It actually has a different name. It's called the Deutsche Mesa Technology Academy. And then we came back here and started working on it, and then COVID hit. So we did not have our kickoff until we were delayed a year, and we had our ribbon cutting in October of 2021. The Smart Factory Institute, yes?
Didn't mean to cut you off. I'm not able to see the slides that you're, are you moving the slides through with the little left and right arrows?
I am. Is that not working?
Let me see if I can pull it back to myself, and then let me give it back to you. Let's see here. Okay, all right, try it now.
Are you seeing that change?
No, I'm not. So let's see here. All right, what I'll do, I'm just going to, I'll just move to the slides. Is that moving for you on your page?
No.
Let's see.
Let me change my file and go back. Still not moving for you?
Let me make you the presenter.
I'm not getting the little notification saying that I'm a presenter.
Okay, let's see here. Change rule to... Let's see here. It's showing on my end that you are, but what I'll do here is... Okay. I'll just... Let's see. So whenever I go like this, you're not seeing any change on your screen?
I am not.
Okay. I got a chat that says that they're able to see, so everybody's saying that it's moved for them. So I'm not sure why it's not working on your end. What we'll do, I'll go through this. Well, if you want to just, I'll move through the slide. So if you just want to, which slide do you want to be on right now?
Okay, I am on slide 4 right now.
Okay, perfect. And then just as you move, I'll just move it for you since it wasn't moving for everybody else. But
okay,
yeah, sorry about that.
And you can see me move it?
I'm not able to, but if you'll just sort of let me know when it's time to go to the next page, I'll move it. Sorry
okay.
about that.
All right. Technology, it's fabulous, isn't it? Especially
Great
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's great, so it doesn't work the way that you want it to. So sorry for that interruption.
Yeah. All right, so we're on we're on slide 4 now about what is the Smart Factory Institute, and we're really here to help manufacturers adopt the newest technology in Industry 4.0 in order to improve their production processes and ensure that they have a skilled workforce. Peak Performance is the company that is operating the Smart Factory, so it is a public-private partnership, and we facilitate intensive networking between suppliers, academia, and users of key technology to optimize production processes and hopefully leading to the economic competitiveness of the business. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see that we are supported by the Tennessee Association of Business Foundation. And then on slide number 6, the Cleveland Bradley Chamber of Commerce. And so we did get started off in, moving on to slide 7, the slide with the Pi Center. We actually did get our start in the Volkswagen Academy, and in 2022 we had been growing quite a bit, and then with some of the changes and some of the challenges that the war in Ukraine had brought, we needed to move into a larger location. So we have moved into the Pi Center in Cleveland, Tennessee, which is perfect because it's right along the I-75 corridor, and it's really opened us up to more manufacturers. The Pi Center stands for Partnership in Industry and Education, and the focus is on STEM technologies. It is an old manufacturing facility, about 275,000 square feet. It previously housed the American Uniform Manufacturing, but they had this building had sat empty since 2006. In 2016, the Bradley County Commissioners purchased it with the idea of making an innovation home, and we're really focused on the small to medium-sized manufacturer and being able to help and support them. So with this, Caleb, I think it might be best then for you to start the video.
Yep, I will start it right now.
Okay, and so this is just a quick, short video to talk a little bit about our location and what our focus is.
right, there's the video's done and ready for you, Denise.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our next, the next slide shows the global network of these Deutsche Mesa Technology Academies. Of course, we are the ones in the United States representing here in Tennessee. There is work that's being developed to create an academy in Mexico, Port Elizabeth. Of course, the one in Hanover that started in 2019. Portugal, there's one that already exists in Morocco, Turkey, Kazakhstan, and Indonesia. And so the focus is to create this technical network that can support each other and really have that global network. And so you might say, well, why Tennessee? And so if you proceed to the next slide, slide number 9, and you start looking at the best states for manufacturing, this data comes from the site selection group where they are looking at manufacturing. Now, of course, everybody is familiar and aware of the Rust Belt and how much manufacturing is there. But what site selection group does is they look to see is where is the new manufacturing going. And so up on the top of this is a bar chart, and you can see the dark blue is at 82%, and the dark green on the other side is at almost 114%, and that is the span of scores around the how each state has scored. And the top 5 ranking states are South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Utah. But if you just take and draw a circle around the southeast, the southeast region of the United States, you can see almost the entire section is green. And when you plug in there where Cleveland, Tennessee is that we're in a prime location to support where all the new growth of manufacturing is. In this region, there's over 55,000 manufacturers. Only 1.5% of those manufacturers are 500 people or larger in their facilities, and which is really surprising because we spend so much time talking about these very large manufacturers. But when you look at the number of manufacturers, they just make up a very small percentage of it. In fact, 88% of manufacturers have less than 100 employees. And if you're really surprised by that information, you'll be really surprised to find out that 60% of manufacturers have less than 20 employees. And so these small companies are really important to our supply chain. The small and medium-sized manufacturers are so important to our supply chain to make sure that the large manufacturers are thriving and doing well in manufacturing. And then the last thing on this chart, just to point out here, is over the years, because we track this pretty closely over the past couple of years, they really have their criteria changes with what's what's important and valuable at that time. And you can really see that 50% of the score is on workforce market alignment. And so there's been obviously a lot of discussion and talk about the workforce and number one, having the workforce, and then number two, that the workforce has the skills that are needed. And that has become so important where manufacturers are looking to where they want to locate. And then a quarter of the score is based on operating costs. And then a quarter of the score is the geographic positioning. Interesting fact, where we are in the Pi Center in Cleveland, Tennessee, we are within a day's drive of 75% of the population of the United States, being in this location right on the I-75 corridor. All right, moving into the next slide. On slide 10, I would be remiss if we were talking about the growth of manufacturing in the Southeast U.S. and not mention the automotive sector. And so you can see in this slide that the automotive sector, the largest manufacturing sector in Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and South Carolina as far as growth. Now, here in Tennessee, food, beverage, and tobacco is one of our highest industries in manufacturing with the amount of manufacturers that we have that are in that area, followed by chemical. But the automotive and all the growth and in the investment in the electric vehicle manufacturing has been very significant in the Southeast region. On the next slide, on slide 11, or there, just overall the U.S. manufacturing facts. Manufacturers, you can see there about $2.5 trillion in manufacturing output, which is equivalent to almost 11% of the country's GDP. There's 12.5 million Americans that are employed in manufacturing as of today, and that makes up about 8.4% of the workforce. Overall, there's about 250,000 manufacturers. And those numbers that I gave earlier, the 1.5% for large manufacturers, that is also the same nationwide. So it's not just in Tennessee, that for all of the United States, you'll find about 1.5% of those are your large manufacturers. And then, of course, you know, I'm inside a location where there's a lot of students that are looking at STEM, and we're trying to encourage them to go into manufacturing. While you know, many students are excited about STEM, they're not necessarily excited about manufacturing. But the compensation and pay benefits for people in manufacturing, that right now the average annual compensation is at $96,000. Now that is not, which we often tell the students, that is not starting salary, but it is the annual average compensation. One thing though we have noticed is the aging population in manufacturing, which may be causing that, because that has really bumped up a lot in the last couple of years. Moving on to the next slide, and slide 12. Just to give you overall some manufacturing by the numbers, you can see there overall for the U.S. Where the manufacturing output numbers are, and you can see we have the steady growth. Through that, we did have a dip in 2016 in the country, not in Tennessee, but in the country we did. And then, of course, the 2020 COVID was a dip, but you can see how we've recovered out of that. The manufacturing sectors overall for the entire country, chemicals is the #1, followed by computer and electronic products. Food, beverage, and tobacco products comes in third, and then you can see aerospace and transportation equipment with motor vehicles and parts coming in as our fifth top industry. And then, so let's move into slide 13 there, where we're going to talk a little bit about Industry 4.0 and what that is. And so you can see the timeline of Industry 4.0, starting off in the late 1700s with water and steam power, moving into the late 1800s when we started getting into assembly line production, and Henry Ford was instrumental in that. In the late 1960s, early 1970s, the introduction of robots and programmable logic controllers and computers started to had another impact. And then where we are today, and that is with smart machines, where we are starting to have machines that are more self-aware, they do self-learning, and then we are connecting with the cyber networks. So moving into slide 14, the Smart Factory, as I mentioned earlier, it gets public-private funding, and so some of that funding, we take that and we have a partnership with the University of Tennessee Industrial Organizational Psychology Master's Degree Program. It's a mouthful. But what they do is they study the human worker. And so with the funding that we have provided them, we've commissioned research to really talk about how is technology impacting the worker, and how do we need to prepare for the worker of the future. So the first study that they did was on the transformation of manufacturing, and there is a lot of buzzwords out there when we start talking about Industry 4.0, you know, between IIoT and AI, machine learning. And so they did some research, and they broke it down to 4 pillars. And those pillars are advanced connectivity, data-driven intelligence, human-machine integration, and advanced production methods. But the one thing that I wanted to really point out is that the smart workers and the smart managers are the center of this, because without them, we can't have technology. So real quickly, I'll go through each one. So on slide 15, we have advanced connectivity, and this is really where we're talking about the sensors that we need to connect to the cloud, and the security that you need for that. So I like to explain that real simple. Is, you know, at home I have a Google Home, and I walk in the door and I say, hey Google, I'm home, and I am connected, and Google will then adjust my lights, my thermostat, and set the turn on the radio, set certain things in the way that I had wanted them. Or most of you, you know, another great way to explain it is your cell phone's not new, your car's not new, but when you get in your car and you're able to connect your, you know, you get your GPS from your phone through your car, that is advanced connectivity. And that's exactly what we're focused on with Industry 4.0, or one of the pillars. It is the most important pillar. It's the first pillar, because in manufacturing, if you don't have that advanced connectivity, some of the other areas are pretty difficult to get. So, moving on to slide 16 and data-driven intelligence. This is really where your artificial intelligence, machine learning, and your big data analytics starts to come into play. So, so the game tomorrow at Neyland is dark mode, and so I happened to see that on Facebook. We're going to the football game for the Tennessee Vols versus South Carolina, and I happened to notice that on Facebook. And wouldn't you know, I thought I better buy my husband a new shirt, because he does not have a dark mode shirt. And wouldn't you know, when I get into when I sign on to Amazon, pops up recommended for you purchases are black and charcoal gray Tennessee Volunteers t-shirts. So a little frightening, but both of those companies, Facebook and Amazon, are perfect examples of how they are using data-driven intelligence. And they're very, very good at collecting their intelligence, analyzing it, and then making recommendations. And so I think that's a good everyday example of when we're talking about data-driven intelligence. Of course, AI has been all through the news, and lots of talking about artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of talk about what do you consider artificial intelligence and what you don't. But I think, you know, with ChatGPT, it is creating some, it's not just collecting the data and analyzing it, it is actually creating something out of the intelligence. So that's how we usually classify what artificial intelligence is. All right, moving into the next slide, slide 17 is human-machine integration, and here is where we're going to start to see, you know, your simulations, your augmented or virtual reality, your cyber-physical systems, and then collaborative robots. A good example of a collaborative robot that you use on a daily basis, or hopefully maybe not use on a daily basis, is a Roomba. So I was a plant manager in a facility that was highly automated. We had large FANUC robots that were behind cages, you know, that people had to, there was lockout tagout in order to get to those. But with Industry 4.0, what we're finding is that the robots and the automation are going to be more collaborative, where you're not going to need that type of safety and security around it. You're going to need different safety and security around it, because they'll be able to collaborate with a worker. So, so your robot and your worker should be able to work side by side. There's a lot of technology that's coming out around that is going to be just game changers for manufacturers for that. And a lot of our large manufacturers are already implementing some of these collaborative robots. The last pillar that I'm going to hit on slide 18 is the advanced production methods, and this is where you're going to find things such as your additive manufacturing, some of your horizontal and vertical systems integration, and even cloud manufacturing. And we're talking about setting up a display here in the Smart Factory of some cloud manufacturing, which would be really exciting for everybody to be able to come and experience. The next one, quickly, I just wanted to touch on manufacturers in our region. We do poll them, and it's really interesting to see that there's, on this chart, you can see that there is kind of a bimodal here where a very large percentage of them, 42%, are just in the awareness area or for their Smart Factory, and they're trying to build knowledge. However, those larger manufacturers you're going to find are in kind of their early adopter and trying to integrate it into their systems. On the next slide, slide 20, you'll see 92% of manufacturers are increasing their investment in Smart Factory technology over the next 12 months. And on the next slide, you'll see that as we asked our manufacturers, over the past 3 years, which applications has your organization deployed in your operation, with systems integration and cloud-based, cloud-based storage and computing being number one. Apologize, that put me in the dark there. Moving on to the next slide, slide 22. 72% of those manufacturers have reported improved operations, productivity, quality, reliability, and responsiveness as their long-term goal, and why they're looking into smart technologies. And then as we look at the challenges on the next slide, on slide 23, probably not a huge surprise, but the number one challenge is the lack of expertise and the lack of skill set for implementing that. The second and third actually go hand in hand. The second one is cost and investment, and the third one is uncertain results and return on investment. And so we do also work those two items, working on experience and skill set, as well as kind of the cost and the return on investment, are the two areas that we really focus on the most, helping manufacturers. There is a real perception that this is very costly. However, we have a robot on display that it costs less than $10,000 here that we've had on display. It was a plastic robot. And then our last chart here, which is on slide 24, is when we ask our manufacturers which items would be most beneficial, having those industry technology networking sessions came up as number one, with conferences and workshops coming in as number two, and then working in interactive exhibits as number three. So those three areas are the ones that we focus in quite often, so that people can use the Smart Factory for those types of things. All right, changing gears a little bit and moving into the workforce side of it. Obviously, I showed that having the expertise in a skilled workforce is the number one challenge. When we take a look at it, we know that 86% of manufacturers believe that they're doing everything that they can to adopt Smart Factory technology, but only 25% are confident that their workforce are going to have the adequate skills that are needed. And so moving into the next slide, on slide 26, I think that is, let me look at that. Yeah, slide 26 is talking about the technology and that impact on the worker. And what we know is that while technology is going to affect many jobs, the overall number of jobs are not going to be reduced. And so we talk about implementing automation in order to help with staffing needs, because many manufacturers are really struggling with hiring people right now, but overall the overall number of jobs are not expected to really reduce significantly. It's really Industry 4.0 is really about efficiency and productivity. And I think a good example of this would be in the 1970s when personal computers came out. There was a lot of talk about that they were going to replace people and humans, and that there would not be jobs for people to, it would eliminate jobs and that there wouldn't be jobs available. And it is true that the personal computer eliminated 3.5 million jobs. However, the personal computer also created 19.2 million jobs. And so the overall number of jobs actually increased with the implementation of that technology. And so I think the most important things are looking to see what jobs are going to be mostly affected, and then how do we keep our workforce and upskill our workforce in order to be prepared for that. Moving into slide 27, this is our what is anticipated to be the high demand STEM jobs of the future. And many of these jobs, especially in small and medium-sized manufacturers, you're not going to find these job titles. However, we do anticipate that in the future, these are going to be jobs that they're going to need to have. And so, for instance, a machine learning specialist may not be a job title that exists today, but it's very likely that it'll be a job title that will exist in the future. On the next slide, slide 28, this talks a little bit more about our partnership with the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, their Industrial Organizational Psychology Partnership. And if you have a background in safety or HR, you probably are familiar with the IO psychology groups, because they do a lot of work in that area. It's been a really good match for us, and it's been a little unusual because a lot of people who are in our space are actually linked with engineering at universities and colleges, and we are the only smart factory that we're aware of that has the research coming on the people side of it. And so that draws me right into the next slide, which is about the smart factory worker. And we have a report that we've published from the University of Tennessee that is on the knowledge, skills, and abilities and other characteristics. And so moving into slide 30 is what the results of their research in that report. And that is that while it is true that the physical requirements will be reduced of people that are in manufacturing, and the technical requirements are going to be increased, there is still a significant need for the new-collar worker, or the worker of the future, to have methodological, social, and intrapersonal skills in order to participate in a manufacturing environment. And the research was really quite surprising. As I mentioned, I have an electrical engineering background, and of course, Dr. Cunningham from the University of Tennessee has a degree in psychology. And when we received the research results and we sat down to talk about it, I mean, it was pretty amazing how we were able to collaborate on that over, several days, talking through the results and seeing how this is going to change requirements of the future worker. All right, so Caleb, just to finish up with a few items around the Smart Factory, and then I'll take questions. We do have 3 technology partners. We've held over 98 conferences, workshops, and events. We've had over 1,000 companies who have participated or benefited and in the Smart Factory Institute in some way, whether it's through training or conferences, workshops, or even remote workshops that we've held, that we have had. We do not, our boundary is the United States, so we're not bounded just to the state of Tennessee or just to the southeast, which kind of feeds into our next scorecard there. You can see is that we've had participants from 35 different states and 11 different countries. And then we also do have a training platform, and we have over 2,700 users on our online training platform at this time. Moving into slide 32, this is our implementation phase. We just, last year we finished up phase 3 by June, and we are currently working on phase 4, and this was for us to work on through June of 2025. We do have a goal of having 10,000 digital registrations on our platform. And then just wanted to finish up with letting you know that we do have the Peak Performance Symposium. It is an annual event. This will be our 9th year holding that event. We always hold it in October because it's manufacturing month. The event actually kicks off at 7:30 in the morning with the Tennessee Manufacturers Roadshow. So the Tennessee Manufacturer Association will have a meetings in Memphis, Cookeville, and then here at the Smart Factory that week. On that Friday, they'll do the kickoff from 7:30 to 9. We'll go into the symposium at 9 a.m. till noon, and then there's also a plant tour at the Duracell factory. So if you're interested and you definitely want the plant tour, there's not a lot of seats. There's probably about 10 remaining seats left for that. So if you want to register for that, I just encourage you to do that quickly. But you don't have to do, there's tickets for the 3 different events, so you can pick and choose and kind of create your day of how you want your day to go. And then with that, Caleb, I am ready to take any questions.
Yeah, I had a couple questions come in. It says, can you talk about how smart factory technologies and machinery might help reduce environmental impacts / prevent pollution?
Yes, yes, I'm glad that you brought that up because there is a lot of discussion around that, around this, and obviously about how sustainability is part of Industry 4.0. A lot of that is going to be around the data, the advanced connectivity and the data-driven, intelligence, and there are technology solutions that manufacturers can implement that can help them to properly manage their energy usage and improve that through the analytics that they'll be getting off of it from their equipment and machinery. Also, they can manage some of their emissions. Being able to manage, depending on in which area are you doing, air, water, or solid waste, or energy usage. I think the one that we have seen the most has been around energy usage, and that has been the biggest driver that manufacturers are contacting us for because they want to be able to see that. It's kind of interesting. We did one for a company around their air, their compressed air, and they had a number of leaks and how much energy they were using up to maintain that. And by connecting that and being able to analyze that, they were able to find those and repair those faster and quicker so that they were able to reduce the cost that they had from that.
Let's see, I had another question. It says, does the Smart Factory offer a stronger focus on EJ communities so that the community is improved along with the skills of the workforce in the area?
Can you say, if you said EJ?
Yeah, like environmental justice, I think is what they meant by that.
Oh, okay. And so are we focused on those communities?
Yeah, is there a stronger focus on those communities so that the community is improved along with the skills of the workforce in the area?
So I wouldn't say that we focus particularly in certain areas. I think by that it could end up being that way. Our focus is on small and medium-sized manufacturers, and oftentimes those small and medium-sized manufacturers may be found more in some of your more rural areas. So I think that there's going to be some crossover, but really our focus is small and medium-sized.
Awesome. I have a couple more questions, but I'm just going to ask you one more just so that we can be cognizant of our final speaker. Let's see. It says, could you talk about some of the unique challenges that a Factory 4.0 facility might face?
Yeah. So there is a number. Some of the technical ones are going to be around cybersecurity, because this requires for you to be able to advance any in such as data-driven or artificial intelligence, machine learning, collaborative robots, you need to be connected. And so that's the number one issue, is security and maintaining that security. Then on the opposite side of that, when you start looking at that smart worker, smart manager side of it, acceptance from your workforce, there is fear that their job's going to be eliminated or replaced by a robot or automation, and then the skill level that is required, because not only do you have to convince people that you're not going to replace their job, but then you're going to have to give them the skills in order to be able to work in an Industry 4.0 or a smart factory, which is going to require a higher skill set, and not just in the digital aspect. It's going to require a higher skill set even on those soft skills.
Well, thank you so much, Denise, for the information and the presentation today. We really appreciate it. And I've got a couple more questions, but I'll make sure to ask you those offline and then get the answers to that. And I'll make sure that those are answered in the follow-up email that I send after this workshop is over. So to finish us off today, we have Dwayne Raper here. He is going to be talking about let me pull this up, I'm sorry. He is the Manufacturing Extension Director at UT Center for Industrial Services. So I'm going to pass it right over to you, Dwayne, and let me see if we're going to have the same issue. There we go here. All right, let's see. It should say that you're the presenter now. Let's see if you're able to go to the next slide. It changes it for us. Yep, perfect. All right, we're good to go. I will mute and let you have the floor.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for this opportunity today to share a little bit about the Center for Industrial Services. I enjoyed the previous presentations, very interesting topics with the Commissioner, and then also with Smart Factory Institute. There's a lot of great things going on there. I'd like to just jump in and share a little bit about the Center for Industrial Services. CIS has been around since 1963. We're celebrating our 60th anniversary this year. Initially, it was put in place by some state legislation to really get a group of folks working with Center, working with engineering department, engineering faculty at the University of Tennessee, and basically engage with the manufacturers across the state to allow, it's like a two-way benefit, right? The companies get help with solving problems, and then by faculty and students, and then also those projects bring experiences back to the university. So, and we still do that kind of work. But we've grown to incorporate several other programs. So UTCIS, our higher order mission is to help customers achieve their goals, and we, as you'll see on the next slide, we have several programs that work with different customer groups, and we know that in certain situations, we can get in a situation where we might question, okay, what do I do here? And this is kind of our higher order work instruction, right? It says, you know, in doubt, here's what we need to do to help our customer achieve their goals. We focus in on that goal and work to help them. There are 6 areas that I want to talk about, 6 really different programs within the Center for Industrial Services. And I have kind of a couple of slides for each one. The Tennessee Apex Accelerator was previously called PTAC. It was changed recently. Economic and Workforce Development Group. We'll talk about that. Actually, let me switch over to we'll just go through them. The Tennessee Apex Accelerator, as I mentioned, previously known as Procurement and Technical Assistance Center, recently went through a change in their funding partner. They're now funded by the Department of Defense Office of Small Business Programs, and their focus is to strengthen defense industrial base by accelerating innovation, fostering ingenuity, establishing resilient, diverse supply chains. So they, this center, their primary goal is to help companies find government contracts, qualify for government contracts, and secure those contracts. So you can see a lot of activities here around that, finding bid opportunities, understanding what their market strategy should be related to government, to selling their product or service to a government entity. And because they're now focused on defense industrial base, cybersecurity, and SBIR, they have also ITAR and mentor protege programs are now new specialty areas for this group. The Tennessee Apex Accelerator is it's one of the highest performing Apex Accelerator centers in the country. They serve here in Tennessee about 800 different companies a year. Very impressive group. If you think your product or service might be something that you could sell to a government entity, these are the folks. You can contact me and I'll put you in, I'll make the connection. We also have a group that's focused on economic and workforce development, and they work with the local and state economic developers and government officials across the state. They run a certified economic developer program. That's the state level. It is developed to emulate the national or international certification for economic developers, the state level program, and then some of these programs, some of the classes qualify for the international program as well. The Center for Industrial Services has been an EDA university center for many years, and under that program, it's really an umbrella organization that helps us identify grant opportunities to find specialized grants to help individual groups with certain topics, those kind of things. It's really a program that helps us find other grant opportunities to serve manufacturers and communities across the state. During one of those efforts, we did asset-based planning efforts in conjunction with the state in most of the communities across across the state. So what this means is we had a group of folks that would sit down with the local government officials, other folks in the community to document, okay, what in my community, maybe it's a rural community, what are the things that we could that we have here that we could build off of to either attract visitors, or maybe we could attract a manufacturer, or you know, what other plans could we do? Could we come up with as related to that? So asset-based planning is one of the things this group does. They currently have an EDA manufacturing resiliency grant, and they partner with the other departments in our center to execute that program. They run it. And then we have a Made in Tennessee program that you might have seen, or maybe your company's been featured as a featured manufacturer of the week on the Made in Tennessee program. If you haven't seen that, go to madeintn.org and check it out. Each week we select a manufacturer across the state that's part of the program, feature that company on social media, tell a story about the product, the company, history, and then there's a handful of companies that we've done videos for as well. So, next program, our Health, Safety, Emergency Preparedness program. This group has an OSHA Training Institute. We collaborate with the North Carolina State and the IES on the Southeast OSHA Training Institute, and so we provide OSHA compliance training and some of the OSHA train-the-trainer programs. We also have through this group, we provide HAZWOPER training, confined space, and even some of that kind of health and safety program in healthcare facilities. The specialized group doing this kind of stuff. And then in our energy efficiency and energy management or environmental management program, we help companies with energy assessments, develop energy and environmental strategies. It's a group of about 3 or 4 people that focus on this kind of work. We work with manufacturers to reduce water consumption, to improve energy consumption, those kind of things. Currently, we're executing an EPA manufacturing grant. This grant 100% funds projects so far for 16 clients over the past 2 years, focused on energy, water, and other waste reduction. And some example projects that have come out of that. One company had, after assessing the plant, we had a recommendation to use variable speed drives on their motors. And that one, the ROI on it was 13.5 months, so pretty quick payback. Lighting projects, these are pretty common for the last 15 years, switching to LED lighting. So that's a common example. This one was kind of neat, the injection molding cooling water project. So in this case, it was injection molding company. When evaluating their challenges, found that they had difficulty with the output that was meeting the output that was expected, and we were able to reduce the cycle time by increasing the cooling by changing the source on the cooling water going into the dyes. So found that the cooling water going into the dyes was over 100 degrees, and found an alternate source that was in the 80-degree range, sped up the cooling on the process and increased the output. So it was a big impact. And then this last one's air compressor project. This company had two very big air compressors, and whenever the air reserve dropped below the limit, they would go into action. And so we were running a great big air compressor just to fill the tank back up. And the idea here was to switch to a smaller alternate air compressor that was a lot more efficient to fill the tanks back up. So quick payback on that one as well. So those are some examples of the kind of energy efficient and environmental work that we do. Slide. About a year and a half ago, we got into the workforce environment by becoming a one-stop operator at the American Job Centers in the Knoxville area. So we have we adopted a group of folks that were already working in that space, and they do a great job. And so what they do is they provide job seeker services. So this is the unemployment office, and then they also work, provide services for businesses to help. They help with different programs through the state workforce, through the state labor and workforce, and also federal programs to assist businesses and then connect the businesses with those people that are seeking jobs. And then the last program I'll mention is the Tennessee Manufacturing Extension Program. This is the program that I'm the director for, and so the Tennessee Manufacturing Extension is part of a national network of MEP centers. There's 51 centers, and what these centers operate to assist small and mid-sized manufacturers, and they provide industry experts to help them provide technical assistance, work on problems. It's a public-private partnership, so there's some fee to the clients to make up the match for the program. If you look across the nation, there are 1,400 trusted advisors, 375 locations. I think I heard there's an MEP office somewhere within 2 hours of every manufacturer in the country. So this is a great network of technical experts to help manufacturing companies work on problems. And why do companies call on the MEPs? These are the results of that survey. Expertise in the staff expertise. 63% of the respondents say that's why they call on them, as well as the cost of services are competitive, and so forth. Here in Tennessee, this is our Manufacturing Extension Partnership team. We have consultants located in the development districts across the state. We did combine Tennessee Development District 2 and 3 because of the number of manufacturers there, but otherwise it pretty closely mirrors development districts. These folks primarily come from manufacturing. They know their way around a factory. They can sit down with you and talk about the challenges your company's facing, and then help you put together a plan on how to address that. So here are some of the different client needs that we address, or the areas: human resources, plant operations, engineering, and the quality departments. These are departments that we frequently interact with on projects. And then I'll switch over to show you the kind of services we provide. So along the lines of we actually collaborate with the Smart Factory Institute on some Industry 4.0 factory assessments. So that's an area where we work together with them, but we help companies understand what are the priorities for automation in their company. Where could they use Industry 4.0? We help them with cybersecurity, technology scouting, so forth. As far as we've been doing this quality management systems work for a really long time. Companies come back to us frequently for help with ISO 9000, 14000, IATF for automotive. So we help companies get prepared to pursue these certifications, and then also train their auditors, and then we do third-party auditing for some companies. Lean, Six Sigma, problem solving, those are kind of other things within the continuous improvement bucket that we do. Again, been doing those things a long time. We have some really strong consultants that can help a company reduce their cost, improve processes. Really, we're working on cost, quality, and delivery there, right? And then supply chain optimization is a big focus of the whole MEP network at this point, a big part of their strategy. And one of the things we do there is we do supply chain connecting, and we have a program called Connects Tennessee, where companies can sign up. And I think I've got some slides on it a little later, but you can sign up and build a profile of your technical capability of your company for other companies to search, so you can be quickly found as a potential supplier for another company looking for your capabilities. Workforce is a big piece of what we do these days. It's just every company struggling with getting enough people, working on their culture to address turnover and improve workplace. So, in addition to these things, another area we have a grant from the Department of Defense, OLDCC, that helps companies that are in the defense industrial base with cybersecurity. They have I think they pay 15% of the cost of this service. So if you're in defense industrial base, need help with cybersecurity, we have a technical assistant. We have capability and funding to help with that. I mentioned Connects. We use this a 10-day Skills for Success Manufacturing Readiness Boot Camp. This is to train folks that maybe to prepare them for a manufacturing career. And the place where we got busy using this program last year was in the justice system. So justice involved participants. We put several groups of people through this training to help prepare them to pursue manufacturing careers when they are released. And so here's some performance metrics on the Tennessee MEP program. During the past 12 months, we've done projects with 191 different companies across the state. Those companies were asked to complete an online economic impact survey to tell how the project benefited their company. So the cumulative numbers are those companies reported $741 million in either new or retained sales. Most of it's retained sales. 915 jobs created or retained. Again, mostly retained, but 915 is a big number. And then cost savings are avoided, 45 million. Of the 191, 77% completed the survey and indicated that we helped them improve their competitiveness. And then as far as the satisfaction score, we're measured on a net promoter score, and that satisfaction rating is 91.2 for the MEP program, which is a very high number for net promoter. Last thing I'll focus on is this Connects Tennessee network. This is a program. There's a national program that the Tennessee Connects program that plugs into. Our center provides the Connects platform for Tennessee companies for no charge. And what you do is, if you're looking for a supplier, you can join Connects and put your inquiry out there for the type of supplier, maybe a certain dimensions on a piece of equipment or a certain type of material that they process. You can put all the details in there to get a quick, short list of potential suppliers. And then if you're a supplier and you want to be found, you can join Connects Tennessee, build yourself the profile to put all the details in there that will help you be found for business opportunities. I think Caleb will send this out if you don't catch this to scan it, but it's easy to register for Connects. Encourage you to do so. And this is the OLDCC grant I mentioned earlier, where we're helping companies get cyber ready if they're in the defense industry. And that's it for me. What questions do we have, Caleb?
There you go. I don't see any in the chat box currently. If you've got any questions for Dwayne, make sure that you send those to me in the chat box. And yeah, just to reiterate what you said, I will be sending out these slides. So if you missed something or you're like, well, what did he say? Or I'll make sure to send those out with a follow-up so that, number one, you can have all the QR codes and are able to register for all the different resources and programs that were mentioned here today. Excuse me. And then you can also have those URLs and links for everything that was mentioned. Let's see. I got one that said, any plans to increase sustainability ESG trainings and/or offerings?
So the answer is yes. We've been made aware of a grant opportunity to help with help companies look at, I think it's ISO 4045, or maybe it's 50,001. That actually there was a call about it earlier today that I missed, but our team is in discussions with some folks from other MEP centers that so multiple centers are coming together to talk with the federal funding partner about funding along those lines. And then obviously we love opportunity to help companies with those type of ESG projects. We have Lynn Reed's our kind of resident expert in that area, and he's been doing that kind of work a long time, and I kind of don't know much about it other than just to call in. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. And so, like I said, here is Dwayne's contact information. But like I said, I will be sending that out, the slides and anything that we mentioned. I'll be sending that out in the follow-up. First off, just wanted to say thanks to all of our speakers for taking time to inform us on these important topics. I'd also like to thank everyone that registered and was able to be a part of this workshop audience today. There's one or two more things that I wanted to mention before we ended today. Let's see this next slide. So some upcoming events that we have for our pollution prevention program is our next webinar. It's an hour-long webinar. It's going to be on Wednesday, October 11th, and it's going to be covering the Tennessee Advanced Energy Business Council. You can see our speakers there and a little overview of what's going to be covered. I'm going to go ahead and put that registration link into the chat. I'll also put that into the follow-up so that everyone's got it. But I wanted to mention that. Would love for you to be a part of that, be in our webinar audience. And then at the very beginning, I was mentioning how we are doing a hybrid approach for our workshops this year. And so, of course, we had this virtual workshop, and then we will be having our in-person workshop, which will be completely different topics and speakers. This is going to be held at the very first part of the Tennessee Environmental Conference that is in Kingsport, Tennessee at the Meadowview Conference Resort and Convention Center. So this is going to be on that Monday, October 23rd, but right before the conference gets started that afternoon. So that's going to be from 1 to 4:30 p.m. Now, I'll go ahead and put that in the chat as well so you can register for. Now, this registration link is just for our in-person workshop. It is not going to be for the entire Tennessee Environmental Conference. But if you plan on attending that conference and want to tack on just an in-person workshop with us, it's free of charge, and we're going to be covering a lot of good topics. If you use this link, you'll be able to see a little bit more in depth on what we're going to be covering. And there will be an email invite sent out with some of our speakers and an overview of that topic. So just wanted to go over those things, and I really just appreciate everyone taking the 2 hours on a Friday afternoon to be a part of our pollution prevention virtual workshop. We couldn't do it without you guys, and we hope that we are a resource and someone that you can look to for help when it comes to sustainability and environmental stewardship here in the state. So thanks again, and everyone have a great weekend.